Immunity starts in your gut, and it starts at birth because the gut and the mouth and this sort of system is your first line of defense against pathogens, viruses. Welcome to the Food Matters Podcast, your home for health and wellness. My name is James Colquhoun, filmmaker and founder of foodmatters.com, and I am your host on this journey to inner and outer transformation. Hi, it's James here from Food Matters, and welcome back to this special Masterclass Edition podcast. This is part 2 of the Masterclass, where I teach the 7 steps to transform your health, heal your body, and to help others do the same. In part 1, we covered the first 3 steps, and today we're going to dive in and explore the final 4 steps. Okay, step number 4, use food as medicine. So step 1 is educate yourself. Step 2 is detox your life. Step 3 is upgrade your diet. And step 4 is uses food as medicine. Really what I want to talk about here is Hippocrates, really the modern father, not that modern, of natural medicine, had 2 sort of core premises. And one is let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And the other one is first do no harm. And unfortunately, in the commercialization of medical treatments, we tend to rush towards surgery or intervention or drugs, and these can be very harmful to the body. And I believe that there's really a step approach to this. So when you're dealing with a condition, or if you have a problem, start with a whole foods-based approach. What food should I eat and avoid to try fix this? Then the next thing is to move towards superfoods, which are like highly concentrated nutrients in foods that give you more nutrients, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, etc. And that's a great way to boost your nutrient intake. The next one is to move towards herbs and essential oils. We know that we have a rich history of herbal medicine, and then essential oils are extracts of those herbs. Then it would be whole food supplements. So this is a bit of a scale. Whole food supplements, then there'd be more therapeutic supplements. Then finally would be pharmaceutical drugs. So if you have this sort of staged approach to like, okay, first I'm going to give this a go, then I'm going to add this, and if that all doesn't work, then drugs would be the last sort of approach. And I'm not saying drugs are bad. For critical life-saving emergency care, yes, but we should try this first. And Dr. Roger Williams, I want to get that right. Andrew Saul talks about this. When in doubt, this is his quote, when in doubt, use nutrition first. I love that. It's so beautiful. So if we think about whole foods, I spoke to that just in the previous point, upgrade your diet, but I want to speak to superfoods a little bit now. And these are foods that are nutrient dense but calorie sparse. So they pack an incredible punch when it comes to giving you more nutrients. And some of our favorites are green leafy veg. Now, there's some contention around kale, and there's some contention around cruciferous veg in terms of cooked and so forth and amounts, but very little. Cruciferous veg has actually been highly implicated in being really powerfully anti-cancer and supporting so many processes in the body. But green leafy veg, for the whole part, you take the consensus of scientists, the independent researchers on this topic, and they're like, this is healing. This really has a powerful healing effect, and we know this because it tends to be more alkaline, more cleansing, rich in phytochemicals and nutrients, and chlorophyll, which is great for detoxification. Remember step number 2. So green leafy veg. Then things like ginger and turmeric and spices. You think about the Indian subcontinent, they eat medicine. And in the West, we've started to shy away from medicine a little bit more. It's coming back, but introducing things like ginger and turmeric, anti-inflammatory, supporting and stimulating and stoking your digestive fire so that you're able to extract more nutrients out of your food. Super powerful. Blueberries, antioxidants to fight free radical damage. Barley grass, wheatgrass, spirulina, these are really powerful chlorophyll rich products that support detoxification, also very highly alkaline, which is powerful. Then acerola and camu, really high in vitamin C, goji berries, cacao or chocolate, the bean, raw cacao is one of the most powerful foods on planet Earth. Hemp seeds, really high in omega-3, essential fatty acids, you get those good fats. It's a complete protein as well. I mean, one of my favorite foods is hemp seeds. Then seaweeds as well, really rich in minerals and trace minerals. So you start to eat your medicine. So every time you're making a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner, think about how can you introduce more medicine into that dish. And many of the recipes on the foodmatters.com website do that, and that's a really important thing to think about. Then in terms of supplements, you want to look at whole food supplements, or also from a medicinal therapeutic perspective, this orthomolecular approach to healing, which is about high dose nutrient therapy. So having nutrients at a normal food level in your diet helps you maintain health and immunity. Once you get sick, there's a theory that was developed by Linus Pauling, which was later sort of more popularized by Dr. Klanner, and then also kept modern by Dr. Andrew Saul. It was in Food Matters, who is the editor-in-chief of the Orthomolecular Medicine News Service, which speaks to this idea, and there's research around this, that high doses of nutrients, say for instance high doses of intravenous vitamin C, start to have a therapeutic effect on the body at high doses without the negative effects of drugs. So before even going to drugs, looking at how you can use high-dose nutrient therapy to be able to support the health of the body. So I think there's even research around viral conditions or common colds and flus can have, vitamin C can have a really powerful impact on that. That's common knowledge now, but when Linus Pauling first suggested this, the medical profession shunned him and said, you're not a doctor, you're a scientist, so you shouldn't be having these theories or ideas. But this makes sense, and it's an incredible idea, and it helped my father in many ways. He had high-dose vitamin C, B3 niacin, high-dose omega-3s, high-dose B-multi, and also 5-HTP, a precursor to serotonin, and that worked really well for him when getting over chronic fatigue syndrome, depression, and anxiety. This is about creating your own home medicine chest and using a food-first approach, then superfoods, then whole food supplements, then synthetic supplements to potentially in high doses as this orthomolecular approach to boosting immunity and health, and then finally going towards drugs in the medical profession. And hopefully that's not needed, or at least that will mean less people are going into that system, which is better for your health and reducing your reliance on the medical system. Now, step 5 is heal your gut and repair your immunity. Immunity starts in your gut, and it starts at birth when the mucogenous sort of liquid from the vagina goes into your mouth. That's the first seat of bacteria that starts to colonize your gut, because the gut and the mouth and this sort of system is your first line of defense against pathogens, viruses, etc. You think about respiratory viruses, or you think about viruses or pathogens that we eat. As a human species, we need to have a strong capability to defend that, which is why nature gave us this unbelievable. Dr. McCullough, one of the experts in the certification program, talks about that 60% of your immunity resides in your gut. So being able to master your gut health can really improve your capability to improve your immunity. Plus also now we know that it's so heavily implicated in autoimmune conditions. So being able to support gut health can help with that. Dr. Axe and Dr. Tom O'Brien talk about this concept of leaky gut or irritable bowel syndrome, sort of starting and building a pathway to creating macromolecules, which are typically proteins or foods that's in your digestive system, instead of it staying in your digestive system and the small villi acting on the sides of your gut wall as a medium to sort of filter those particles so that you get micromolecules going into the bloodstream, into the cells. What happens is if we have damage to the gut wall through things like stress, GMO foods, too much sugar, modern wheat, and some other things, we tend to create these holes or leaky gut where you get particles leaking or macromolecules leaking into the bloodstream, which then trigger an autoimmune response. Now, autoimmune now is implicated in such a wide varying array of conditions and illnesses, from arthritis to Hashimoto's to thyroiditis to all these, to even fatigue syndrome. So understanding that the gut not only gives you immunity, but also gut health can help support and stave off autoimmune conditions is hypercritical. And modern semi-dwarf wheat, which we talk about in Transcendence and which we have many experts talking about in the certification program, really shows that there is a particular food group, and there's many other food groups, GMOs and sugar and certain chemical additives, are heavily implicated in kicking off this systemic process of triggering autoimmune disease and these macroparticles going into the bloodstream. So as you start to think about how can I heal from an autoimmune condition, or how can I support my immunity, then we need to start to think about the filter of supporting our gut and supporting our gut health. And we do that by eliminating certain food groups, some of the ones I just spoke about, and introducing more food groups that are more stable and supportive of gut health. Things like foods that are high in fiber, prebiotic foods, sweet potatoes, and root vegetables are really powerful for that. Then bitter greens. Bitters are really powerful as supporting gut health, but also supporting overall health. And it's little wonder that they use the term bitter medicine, because most bitter foods have sort of a medicinal component in them. Other foods that are really powerful for gut health are foods that are glucogenous in nature. So they have like a gel. So chia seeds in water has a gel, aloe vera has a gel-like quality to it, even flax seeds for that matter, or even seaweeds have a gel-like consistency. And then you look at the gelatinous foods from animal sources like fish or bone broths also have that as well if you choose to eat some of those products. So that helps to sort of support gut health by having more of these types of foods. And then going back to the upgrade your diet points of just eating a generally more healthy diet will support gut health. So this is a very powerful element of your transformation, and being such a seat of power. And we talk about in yogic philosophy or in Eastern philosophy, this Manipura chakra, or this center in the navel center, or Rudrani, where this is the Kundalini activated in the navel center. Or in the Qigong, they talk about this center of power in the gut area. We know that the ancient traditions knew that having pranic power, energetic power in that area is really important. And if you're feeding your gut a lot of things that suppress its power and suppress its energy, GMO foods, sugar, or stress for that matter, which can be implicated in poor gut health, toxins, etc., you're reducing your power in that gut area, which is not ideal, especially being that it's 60% of our immunity. Another really powerful thing that indigenous cultures and science is showing is really important for gut health is fermented foods. And we've had a rich tradition of integrating fermented foods into our diet, and that's become less common. So how can you introduce more probiotic-rich fermented foods into your diet should be a question you should be asking about your gut health. Once you've sort of healed your gut and removed the irritants, then brought in more mucogenous-based foods to sort of line the gut wall and heal that gut wall, then you can start to think about what sort of probiotic foods can I be starting to introduce more of. Things like sauerkraut, kimchi, pickled vegetables, kefirs, kombuchas, yogurts. There could be coconut yogurts. So thinking about introducing more of these on a consistent basis. Anytime you eat cooked food, cultures are often had a fermented food, or introducing more of those fermented foods on a regular basis to support your overall gut health. That was a quick jump through that, but I wanted to make sure we covered that because I'm going to get to an important step now, in step number 6, which is about reducing stress in your life. A lot of what we've been talking about in this masterclass so far has been very mechanical in what do you eat and what do you avoid. But the non-food components of our health are absolutely critical when it comes to maintaining overall well-being. And reducing stress is so important. It's a modern plague that is something that Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza and many others, and Dr. Libby Weaver for that matter, speak about as having a supreme negative effect on your immunity and your health. Because there's essentially 2 phases of being. One is fight, freeze, or flight, and the other is rest, digest, repair. Now, if you're unwell, which one do you think you need more of? Rest, digest, repair. And in ancient times, the fight, freeze, or flight would happen on a very infrequent basis, and we'd be charged with all this adrenaline and cortisol and epinephrine to be able to go and fight and make that happen, or freeze or flight. And then it would get digested through walking away or running away, and it would move through the body, and then we'd move back into rest, digest, repair. Now, in the West, we have psychological stress, which is having a huge impact on our mental stress on a day-to-day basis. So we have mortgage bills, we have stuck in traffic issues, we have the boss or the partner that we don't like anymore, and this is putting us into a chronic state of stress on a frequent basis, which is very damaging for not only our gut health, which is the seat of our immunity, but also our overall health. So what we need to be thinking about, or what these experts and scientists are teaching us, is to how do we introduce more stress reduction based techniques into our life on a regular basis. Stress reduction techniques, the simplest stress reduction technique that exists is to extend the exhalation of your breath. And to do that sends a powerful signal to the body that we are safe. Also, Dawson Church, one of the teachers in the certification program, talks about this idea of somatics or touch. If you want to calm a baby, you don't explain to it, hey, chill out, you don't need to worry about this. You hold it, you touch it, you stroke its head, or you touch its body. This is a somatic symbol or a somatic gesture. And when you introduce somatics with breath work, you start to reduce stress in a powerful way, or you introduce somatics with, so tapping, for instance, with some sort of repetition of, say, a mantra or an affirmation. You start to really bring the body into a calm state in a very quick way. Ancient cultures knew about this. Yogic cultures knew about this with breath work and yoga nidras, or sound healing for that matter, to be able to calm the body down. Chanting, you think about in the West, you have the Gregorian chants in the Catholic tradition, you have the Sanskrit chants and mantras in the Eastern tradition. And Jerome Byrne, I remember interviewing him, the medical journalist for The Guardian. He did research on this with Patrick Holford and showed that religious chanting was able to reduce high blood pressure. So if you're on blood pressure medication, try chanting. But this is, again, going back to this ancient idea about what we knew before we thought we knew everything. And it's a very powerful idea. So research has shown that up to 80% of people, first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is grab their phone. And when you do this, what happens is you're silently and subtly giving away your power to a device. So instead of waking up and taking a breath air, or putting your feet on the ground and being grateful to be alive, as Wayne Dyer does, or chanting, or going to your meditation cushion and starting to calm your mind and clear your mind, because as the yoga teachings say, the more we can work on clearing the conditioning of our mind, the more we can tap into those intuitive powers. We can tap into that sense of being in a state of peace and bliss, in less stress and less reaction. And instead, we're moving to our phone, or we're turning on the news and we're hearing or seeing death, pain, fire, destruction, or jealousy, or I'm not good enough, or look at this person's life. And that puts us in a subtle state of stress once again. So the trap of moving into chronic stress on a frequent basis is causing a degradation of our immune system. It's causing a breakdown in our health and well-being. It's causing us to experience more illness. And again, this is one of the points that I touched on at the beginning of this masterclass, is that if success leaves clues towards being more successful, so does failure. And if we are seeing stress-related illness, or stress being a precursor to many chronic conditions like heart conditions, high blood pressure, or even the suppression of the immune system leading to viral infections, or more flus or common colds, or even to cancer for that matter, then we're starting to see that our failure to regulate our stress as a species is leading us to more failure, to more sickness and more disease. So being able to have morning rituals to reduce stress is hypercritical, but also stress can come in the form of chemicals. Chemicals are a stress to the body. And because stress from a mental perspective creates a hormonal cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, and peace and calm makes another set of hormones. But ultimately, if we take a chemical in our body, that's also just taking the direct chemical. So if you're exposed to the off-gassing or the exhaust gas of a dry cleaning factory or event close to your house, that's a stress. If you have a cell phone tower close to your house, that's a stress with electromagnetic radiation. If you leave your phone on Wi-Fi, or if you leave your Wi-Fi or your DECT cordless phone on at night, that's a stress to your body. Your body doesn't know the difference between whether it's a chemical that's created from a mental projection, or if it's a chemical that's actually entering the body, or if it's a wave or a frequency that's entering the body. These are all just biological stresses to the body. So we need to start to minimize the stress in our lives: emotional, relationships, EMF, EMR, chemicals, sugar, GMOs, and also perceived mental stress of mortgages and finances and traffic stress, etc. And then build more techniques like extending the exhalation, meditation, walking barefoot on the ground to get rid of those frequencies. Do you suffer from gut health issues, chronic pain, or irregular hormones, and you just can't seem to find a solution? You're not alone. If you're listening to this podcast, you most likely value your health, feeling good and want to be able to take the best care of yourself and your loved ones, and why shouldn't you? At Food Matters, we believe that your body is worthy of good care and that no one is more suitably qualified to care for it than you. This is why we have created a world-class nutrition program designed to help you transform lives, including your own. It's called the Food Matters Nutrition Certification Program. Studying nutrition changed my life. It helped me cut through the confusion of paleo, veganism, plant-based, intermittent fasting, and more to experience lasting energy, vitality, and improved immunity. In the Food Matters Nutrition Certification Program, we've assembled the greatest minds, independent from big business interests, to share with you the most trusted research on nutrition and healing, including David Wolfe, Dr. Mark Hyman, Andrew Saul, Krista Recchio, Dr. Libby Weaver, Dr. Alejandro Gonga, and many more. So if you want to understand how to heal your own gut, balance your hormones, reduce inflammation and chronic pain in your body, then head over to foodmatters.com/study to learn more and join the waitlist to be the first to know when enrollment opens again. You will not regret this investment in your health. Okay, so now we're on to step 7, and that is rewild yourself. Wow. So this point speaks in particular to the points that I made earlier around the education, where we need to be adopting a philosophy when it comes to health and well-being that embraces the best of modern, independent, not for hire science, and the best understanding of anthropology and longest lived cultures and people on planet Earth currently existing today at this very moment. And I think that also bridges this idea of the head and the heart. And by rewilding yourself, which is sort of a term that I borrowed from a dear friend of mine and one of the teachers in our certification program, Daniel Vitalis, who uses this term quite a bit. And to rewild yourself means to adopt this philosophy of connecting to Mother Nature. Joe Cross, also from Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, or Reboot with Joe, had this philosophy as well. When he got sick, he wondered what would happen. Instead of turning his back on Mother Nature and going down a drug-based approach, what if he turned around and read full steam towards Mother Nature? And his approach for doing that was juicing for 60 days straight. He had an incredible weight loss experience. He was able to get off his medications, and he was running towards Mother Nature. Now, we understand that when we go and spend a day in the forest, or we go spend a day at the beach, or we're in nature, or we're walking barefoot and connecting with the ground, or, and there's new Japanese research going into this called forest bathing, where there's actually retreat centers in the world where people go who are sick, they get prescribed forest bathing therapy, where they're able to go and sit in nature and just soak in the natural energies of nature and not be exposed to all the external stimuli that we are in the developed world, or in built up cities and environments, that this can have a really profound effect on your health and well-being. And if we look at indigenous cultures, and for instance, this time I spent in Vanuatu on this remote island, in Epi Island, they don't really know chronic disease per se. You know, diabetes, cancer, heart disease are not really commonly known there. However, when you take an indigenous person from a remote island and you move them to the city, even still in this remote island, where there was a French-British colony, the only place in the world where the French and the British co-ruled, there is bakeries, bread, the French. There's restaurants that serve more British and colonial style food. There's sugary drinks. There's shops, corner stores that sell sugary lollipops and soda pop and 2-minute noodles. And so the people that move to the city move away from their natural diets. They move away from being barefoot and almost scantily clad, sometimes naked almost, in the environment, hunting, gathering, gardening, or gathering, gardening, hunting, and eating a pure diet in a natural environment, to the city, where even this supposed city, nowhere near a New York or an LA or a Tokyo, and they start eating bread. They start consuming 2-minute noodles with MSG and flavorings and additives and modern wheat. They start consuming sugary drinks made in factories, God knows where in the US or Asia, that is high fructose corn syrup or concentrated sugars. They start having more stress and pollution. There's more cars in this city. There's a little bit more stress because you can't just live a subsistence lifestyle. You need to get a job. And then if you lose that job, then you don't have money, and you need money to pay for things in the city, whereas in the forest or in the jungle, you trade, and it's more of a subsistence style lifestyle, which might seem like a poverty mindset. We think, oh, those people are poor, they should come to the city and earn some money and build up some wealth. But in actuality, when you strip it all back, real wealth is not having to rely on a system where you're going out to work to pay for a roof, to pay for food, and then really coming back into these isolated satellite communities where we have less sense of community and connection with our elders. So really embracing how can we, the question is in this rewilding section, is how can we adopt and incorporate as many of the ways that our indigenous ancestors connected with the environment into our modern world. And it might be as simple as getting barefoot once a day on the grass or in a park or on the beach. It might be as simple as eating more wild foods. And this is a big thing that Daniel Vitalis talks about. When you go to a supermarket, we've reduced the amount of species that we eat. So we're eating 30, 40, 50 species of plants as opposed to 3, 4, 500 species of plants. And so experimenting with different species of plants and starting to broaden your horizon. So if you've never bought bitter melon, buy bitter melon. If you've never had taro or yam, buy yam. Start to experiment with different foods. If you only buy button mushrooms, try shiitake or enoki or whatever they are. If you never have seaweed, try seaweed. Broadening this, because what you're also doing is you're broadening your nutrient profiles from each of these individual plants or vegetables or herbs or superfoods or seaweeds. And by doing so, you're reappropriating more to an indigenous way of living because they eat a very wide array of foods and herbs and nuts and seeds, etc. So that's another way of rewilding yourself. Another thing might be to build more of a sense of community in your day-to-day life. So going to community groups or finding like-minded communities in the Food Matters community, be that online, which is some form of community, but in person ideally. Maybe it's a yoga center or a place that you go, or maybe you host healthy movie screenings with our films. You can contact foodmatters.com and ask us if you want to do that, to bring together this community. And in the East, they know about this as a sangha, a tribe, a kula, a community. And we've broken down a lot of our communities in the West with satellite, suburbia, separate from these cities where we commute in and out of. So trying to reappropriate community as well. And also another thing is sunlight. We are scared of the sun. We're told that if we get too much sun exposure, it will cause phytoaging and cancer, potentially skin cancer. And of course, that can be true if we're eating a lot of damaged oils, and the process of converting sunlight and using naturally occurring cholesterol in our bloodstream into vitamin D, that process might be affected because we have too many bad oils in our system. We've been eating too many fried foods or margarines. But if we're eating healthy food and we're getting a healthy, short amount of sun exposure, it can be extremely helpful for us. Dr. Ian Brighthope talked about how one of the biggest issues in Australia is we have this anti-sun campaign where we must slip, slop, slap. Slip on a shirt, slap on some sunscreen, or slop on a hat, whatever it might be. It's a campaign. And what that resulted in after 15 or 20 years of this campaign is more awareness about this, but we're using toxic sunscreens. We're making older people stay out of the sun, which causes a breakdown in vitamin D, which supports calcium in the body, which means you get brittle bone disease, and then these ladies will fall over and they will break a hip or a bone, and there was a lot more prevalence of these types of injuries happening, which many researchers, independent researchers, are linking back to these fear campaigns about not getting any sun because of the fear of sun cancer. So I think it's fascinating to start to look at, and then again, that might be related to, we used to think smoking was a good idea to get low weight babies. We now know it's not a good idea, and of course those chemical cigarettes are not great. Of course some cultures use tobacco and nicotine, but it might be from just a pure leaf from the bush that they use in their ceremony. So we need to start to look at what are the things we're being told we must do for our health. We need independent questioning. And I disagree with conspiracy theories or all of these things. In general, I do disagree with them. What I do agree with is always ask questions. Always question everything. Because if we've been wrong so many times before as a modern species, then chances are we're going to be wrong again. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. I think the scientific community is scared of being wrong, and they always want to be right because they live in a black-white binary on-off mindset. However, if we adopt more of a fluid approach of like, look, this is the best of our understanding now, or we look more with that filter of science and anthropology, we're able to get a better understanding of what might serve us as individuals and humanity better. So this is the concept of rewilding yourself. And I love it because it is amazing for our health. So talking about vitamin D in particular, so sunlight can help convert cholesterol to vitamin D, but there's some great food sources. I want to touch on them here. I'm just referring to my notes. Vegan sources are shiitake mushrooms. Some animal sources could be egg yolks or wild-caught fish. And in particular, Mark Hyman talks about the smash fish, so sardines, mackerel, anchovies, herring, and salmon. Trying to find sustainable wild versions of them as much as possible. And so nature really is providing everything we need. And when you go and reconnect with nature, it can provide you with an incredible healing effect. And we know this because when you take people out of nature and into a modern world, they start to experience poor health effects. And we say, the scientific community say that we're impacted by our genes and that our genes determine our health outcomes. And if your mum had cancer, or if your mum had cancer, then you're predisposed to have cancer. Now, look, genes are information and signaling, have information and signaling capability to the body. However, what we now know about epigenetics is that how we eat and how we live influences the environment, the epi above, like the epidermis or the epigenetics, the environment above and around the genes, which can switch on or off different biomarkers. Bruce Lipton's brought a lot of this to prominence through his research in biology. And also from a research perspective, Dr. Ian Brighthope spoke to me about studies where they took Japanese women who had a very low incidence of breast cancer and low gene response to breast cancer in Japan, and when the Japanese women would move to America, their prevalence of breast cancer would increase to the same as the rate of the average American woman. So what is the environment and what is the genes? And the more we learn about epigenetics, the more we learn that it's actually the environment that plays the biggest impact in supporting the expression of this gene. So if you want to break free from the belief that genes are your destiny, first thing is you educate yourself about epigenetics, right? I'm going back to our first point here, which shifts your beliefs that genes control my health to, well, genes are my genes, but I can have an influence over them based on the environment that I surround them with, which leads to the choices you make. You make different choices about how you eat, how you live, where you live, etc. And then that gives you a different outcome. So rewilding yourself is the last point in the 7th point here, and I think it's one of the most important because it really speaks to that natural indigenous understanding about how to live. So I want to recap here just quickly. Educate yourself, detox your life, upgrade your diet, use food as medicine, heal your gut and repair your immunity, reduce stress in your life, and number 7, rewild yourself. And I'm so, so grateful you've been here for this masterclass. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with me. And I know that you've probably learned a lot and written a lot of notes. And I also know that if you're anything like me, you love learning and you're a vicarious learner and you're a truth seeker. And if you are interested in going deeper on any of these topics, this is a small part of the information that we have as part of the Food Matters online nutrition certification program to qualify you as a certified nutrition coach. And this will give you the capability to not only help heal your own body and to help give you the information that you need and the education you need to make better decisions, to shift your beliefs about how the body works and to experience a different outcome in your life, but also to be able to be qualified to educate people about how they can help make those decisions for themselves. The world of diagnosis and treatment exists in the medical fraternity. I have no interest in taking any of that on board, and if you're a nurse or a medical doctor, welcome. Thank you for your incredible work. If you're not a nurse or a medical doctor, this program will help give you the education you need to take control over your body in a more fully capable way, the education that we were not really given when we went to school, or mostly when we went to university as well. And even many of the students that study nutrition and dietetics at university that work at the Food Matters headquarters now are still learning so much about how this approach of independent research and anthropology creates a different field of vision in terms of how the body works systemically. Thank you so, so, so much. I'm humbled and so grateful to be a host and a guide for this information for you and for the world. And really, it wouldn't be possible without the great minds that have put thousands of hours and lifetimes collectively into this research. And I'm so grateful for their work and their dedication. Have a beautiful day, and I look forward to welcoming you inside the group. Ciao for now. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends and family on social media or leave a comment below. We love hearing from you. If you want to find out more and sign up to our podcast to make sure you don't miss an episode, head to foodmatters.com/podcast. And I look forward to seeing you next time.